Good morning. We're learning as a schus for Shlomo Filan Chai Basarachem for Meir Ben Cyril Peril. We're on the top of Mem Zayin Omen Beis. Second line. Amar Rafram. This is going to be continuing with a very Elu Trefus type of Gemaras, getting into the nitty gritty of lungs. Amar Rafram. Hi Rei at the Damya Ufsa. A lung that is similar to wood. Trefa. That makes it trefa. There's going to be three pshatim in what that means, in what way it's similar to wood. Some say it's in the appearance, it's similar to wood in appearance, and some say it's similar to wood in how it feels. And then the Gemara explains what each of those things. Ika Amri Dineficha, that it looks like a piece of wood, because when it gets when it gets bloated, when it gets full of air, inflated, it gets hard like wood. It looks like wood. That it feels like wood in that it becomes smooth because it's hard. So those are the explanations of the first two pshatim. Now a third pshat, Eked Armi, the shayid the less lechitucha daini. And some people say that it's when it says that it looks like wood, it means that it's like a single block of wood, that it doesn't have the separate nodes that like we discussed, that there are three on one side and two on the other. It all looks like one mass. Amar Rava, kekuchla kshera, like used to put blue eye makeup on if I guess it's very oxygenated, the lungs are blue, it's kosher, which I think that's a healthy lung. Kediyusa treifa, if it's black like ink, it's treifa. Amar Rav Chanina, shchoir adamhu. When something is black, it really means it was red, it was bloody. Ela shalaka, except for that the blood, it got sick and it wasn't able to hold in the blood and it got exposed to oxygen. As we all know, when blood gets exposed to oxygen, it turns black, it oxidizes. I don't know if anything that I'm saying is true, but this is what I remember from, like 10th grade biology. Eureka kshera. Eureka is not a specific color. Eureka means like a vegetable. There's a lot of different vegetables. The Gemara will later say it's a greenish color, like a leek, but it could be, it could be yellow squash, or it could be the other vegetables. So we say it's kosher midir b'nasan. Aduma ksher midir b'nasan, and if it's red, it's also kosher like Reb Nasan. Where do we see that Reb Nasan holds that green and red are kosher? The Tanya. Reb Nasan pamachas.
There was nothing argues with the Reb Chanina that the black is not good.
No, we said no. He's just
black
saying,
is really red. We said
no, but it got sick because it wasn't. The red is okay. No, everyone agrees that red is okay, but the problem if it gets black, that means something diseased about it. The red got out, and it's not supposed to be any black, any oxidization of the blood inside of the animal. So, but so Yeroika and Aduma are kosher from Reb Nasan, the Tanya of Nasan. Pamachas alachti l'krachei ayam. I went overseas. Basa isha achas lefanai. Shamli lebna rishon umeis sheni umeis. That a woman came to me that she did a milah for both of her first sons and they both died. Shlishi, when the third one came, haviyasa lefanai. She brought the child to me to ask, what should I do? Reisiv shehaya adoi. I saw that he was red. Amati la biti. Hamtini la sheyivla boy damai. Said, this is not a fatal flaw. Red is a sign that the blood is on the surface, but if you wait, the blood will be reabsorbed and then it will not be a problem. Hamtina lai. So she waited. She did the Mila and it taka happened. But Karnes and Nasan Habavli. They called the child Nasan Habavli as a thank you to Reb Nasan that gave this Eitzah. But in any case, you see that Edom, redness, is not a fatal sign because it can be ameliorated by waiting. You wait for it to get reabsorbed. I went to another place, Kaputkia. Basa Isha Lafanai Shamala ben Arishan Umeis Sheni Umeis Shlisha Vyasa Lafanai. The first two died, and they brought the third baby by Mila, and they brought the third baby to me. Yisa Shahayi Yarak. I saw that he was, I guess, greenish. Tzatzi boy, and I looked at him. Dam bris. I saw that he didn't have enough blood for a bris. That if you do the bris, then not sufficient dam would come out to be machshir the bris. Meaning I guess he just didn't have enough blood developed in the system. Amatala beat him tinilachi yipol boy dome. You have to wait till he produces enough dam. Habtinalai umalai sevachaya. She waited and she did the mila and he lived. Again, they called him Nasan Abavli, but you see that green also, even though it's a mum iver, not legally a mum. I mean, even though it's not healthy, but it's something that can be fixed. Amr of Kahana, ki kveda kshera. If the heart, I'm sorry, the liver is similar, the lungs are similar to the way a liver normally looks, it's kosher. Kibisra trefa, but if it looks like basar, then it's trefa. That means the lungs are not supposed to look like regular meat, like the meat that we eat, the steak. It has a different look or a different feel. If it looks like a liver, even though it's different than the way it usually looks, that's a passing phase. It could get healed. But if it looks like basar, then it's trefa. Misimanach a basar b'stei trefa. The Torah says, basar, b'stei trefa, that reminds you that on a lung, basar is trefa. Amr Usama Breda Rava. Usama, the son of Rava, Hai Rei the Damyak Kakushta, Ukamarika, Ukagaim Biyasa. A lung that's similar to Kakushta is barley fermented barley. Umarika is saffron, and like Beyasa, like the yolk of an egg. All different varieties of yellow. All these are trefa. So Eli Yuroika the Kshera Hechidami. We had said before Yuroika is kosher. Yuroika typically it includes the whole spectrum from yellow to green. I think they're right. Isn't green a mixture of yellow and blue? So I think it's somewhere they're closely related. So the Gemara is asking, what? So what is if you're excluding the whole yellow family? What Yuroika is going to be kosher? And for the Gemara, kekarsi, like a leek, which is a more greenish color. Amar Ravina, Autumn Bereya, if you have a blockage inside of the lungs, something is blocking from amongst the different nodes. Maisin and Sakina, you bring a knife for karinala, and you cut it. Iisba mugla, if there's pus, vade machas muglahu. Certainly it's an infection that blocked it up. That's temporary. When the infection clears up, the blockage would go away. Uksheira. Viloi, lurfna, masvina legatva iroika imevatzvitza. You bring on it a feather or spittle or a straw. I'm sorry. Legatva iroika. You bring on it feather or spittle. If it moves because air is passing through, even though it's blocked, there's enough air to pass through, so therefore the lungs can still function, then it's kosher. V'loi treifa. And if not, that means it's a structural blockage that will eventually kill the animal, and it's a treifa. Amr of Yosef. right? This is not talking about a hole on the outside of the lungs. It's talking about a blockage somewhere in the normal passageways of air in the lungs. Amar Rav Yosef, Krum she'ala machmas maka. This is something we had before. If you have scar tissue that comes because of a wound, you had a hole in the lungs, and then scar tissue arose on it, urea in the lungs, ain't a krum. It's not considered to be a membrane. It's considered to be temporary, so therefore it's considered to be a lung that has a hole in it, and therefore it's going to be possible. It's going to be treif. V'amar Rabbi Yosef, hi reya da avsha. A reya, this is a Gemara we had just before at the last Amid. A reya, a lung that is letting out a noise. You can hear the noises, the air escaping. If you know where it's escaping from, a gila, you put on it a feather or a straw or spit. It's a treif. If it moves, it's treif. If it doesn't move, it's kosher. And if you don't know where the hole, where the air is escaping, where the noise is, you bring a container of lukewarm water, you put the lung in it. You can't put it in hot water because um, that will plug up any holes. But and you can't use cold water because that will cause it to create new holes. You use warm water, lukewarm water. If water comes out, then it's treif. If you like shera, tata inkov, ilo lo inkov, because even though you hear a sound, it's only going, it's not going through the outer layer, the outer membrane of the lungs. That wasn't, there's no nekev in that, there's no hole in it, and therefore it's kosher. It's just because the air is getting into that area between the two membranes, between the inner membrane and the outer membrane, but it's not escaping the lungs, and therefore the lung is a kosher lung. Amar ulam Rabbi Yochanan, reya shenishbecha kakitan, a lung that the contents of the lungs, the part that makes up the inside of the lungs, has gotten soft, and it can be poured out like a kettle. It's kosher. We had this before, legabi the moich, legabi the inside of the shedra, the spinal cord. Alma, kasav chesar mifnim loish mechesar. You see from the fact that we're saying that even though if you pour out, it could pour out, it's obviously not working if it's so liquefied. It's still kosher. Right? Says that missing part of the internal parts of the lung does not passel it. A lung that got a nekev or that's missing. My chasra. What does it mean chasra? We had said this. This was in I think our Mishnah or Brisa. I grabbed it when we saw that. I thought it meant shechasra. That Brisa it meant that was missing one of the nodes, not. But I guess the nodes are einis are external. So that's not the way I'd understood it when we first saw it. But now it's saying haresh nikva shechasra my chasra ilemi b'chutz hainu nikva. If it means that's missing something on the external surface of the lungs, that's the same thing as a nekav. Elah mi b'fnim. Elamai means on the inside part. Shma min yachasam b'fnim shmei chisaron. So you see a chisaron on the inside is a chisaron. We're talking about on the outside. I always said then that's a nekev. This is going according to Rav Shimon. This is only needed according to Rav Shimon. He says a nekev is not going to passel it unless it reaches all the way into the oxygen exchange, whatever they're called. Those sampunas, those avioli or something. So hanimili neka deles b'chesaron. That's talking about a neka that doesn't have that's not missing something. Now this b'chesaron afilu Shimon might. But a nekev that is missing something, even Rav Shimon, um, that if it's when we said chisaron, really chisaron, there's going to be a difference between a nekev that has a chesaron and that doesn't. So if it has a chesaron, even Rav Shimon, who says it's mutter with there's a nekev on the outside that doesn't reach the sampunis, if there's a nekev with a chesaron, meaning that this some of the outside portion of the membrane, the thing that covers the outside of the lungs, is missing, even Rav Shimon might it's going to be possible without reaching the sampunis. So that's what we're saying so we're not coming to say that a chesaron on the middle in the internal parts of the lung is going to passel. It's just talking about this particular case according to Rav Shimon. Like this chesaron, I feel Rav Shimon might. Rav Chananya cholish. Rav Chananya got sick. All the gabe Rav Nosson b'chol gedolei hadar. Rav Nosson and all the gedolei hadar came to visit him. Aisu kamei reish and nifshcha kikitin. They've had this exact case of a lung that the innards were able to pour out like from a kli. The akshara, and he said it's kosher because, like we said, chesaron and the inside is not a chesaron. Amar Rava, v'hu dekaimi sampunis. Rava said, but that's only if it's not the sampunis. Like we said, the sampunis are the parts that do the work on the inside of the lungs. It has to be the other things that make up the other flesh or material that makes up the inside of the lungs. But the sampunis, if that's missing, then you have a problem. That's going to be a treifa. How do you know whether you find this mush of liquefied inner lung stuff? How do you know it was from the sampunis or something else? You get a glazed vessel so it's not going to impart any impurities into this mixture. And you pour this liquid into it. If it has white streaks in it, though the sumpinus makes white streaks, so those white streaks show that part of the sampunis dissolved, and therefore it's a treifa. Be like shared, if not, it's kosher. Amr of Nachman, Reya shenimuka, a reya that has basically shriveled up on the inside, and it's missing some of the material. Not that it's there and it became liquid, but it just disappeared. It got absorbed. For kumshal akayim, but the outer layer is still there. Ksher, it's also kosher. Tanya mihachi reyesh nimuka kumshal akayim afil machzekas revius. Even if the missing area is a revius ksher, it's still kosher. A related din or similar din, nitla shlafuches. Rashi says krum shehavlad munachba. It sounds like the uterus. Well, I guess once we're talking about the krum, the outer layer, the outer membrane of the lungs, we talk about something else that also has another outer layer. It's kosher. Hitliya kavod shelo. If the liver got worms in it, I'm not sure why this is coming up here. I guess it was all in the same discussion. If they got worms in the liver, this happened. The people from Asia had this question, and they came up Gimel Regalim liyavna. The 3 years in a row, 3 regalim in a row. They went up to Yavna, which was the place with all the Gedolim to ask this question. L'regel shlishvi tiru alahem. On the third day, they weren't able to give an answer till the third regel. After contemplating it, they told them that it's mutter, that this is the worms can be dewormed. You can give ivermectin and get rid of it. Amr of Yosef ben Yumi, Amr of Nachman, Reya hasmucha l'doifen, a lung that is next to the flanks of the animal, right? The sides of the animal, where the meat is. Ein chayshishin. We don't have to worry. So we know that's like a sircha, right? If lungs are attached to another lung. That's a sircha and it passes it.
What's a circle?
Sircha is an adhesion that where
Oh,
it attaches, yeah. So we're worried. I think the way Rashi understood it is that the adhesion is covering over where there was a hole. So we're saying, but if it's attached to the outside wall of the animal, we're not chayshish lo. Helps it smochen, but if um if there's uh if there's signs of growth, so boils in that spot, chayshin lo, then we have to worry. We have to chayish, and like we'll see, maybe you can do something about it, but you have to be chayish l'treif. Mar Yehuda Mishmei Davimi Amar Echad Zeh ve'Echad Zeh Chayshin Lo. He says, doesn't make a difference. You don't need these tzmises, these blisters or boils, in order to show you that you have to be chayish for this adhesion, for the sircha of the lungs to the walls of the animal, to the flanks of the animal. So Hechi Avdina, what do you do about it if you're concerned about it? Amar Rava, Rav and Bar Shava, Azrali, he explained to me, my sinus akina de chalish pume. You get a very sharp knife, umafrakinan law, and you cut it. If you see that there's some kind of flaw, there's some kind of sircho, not a sircha, a discoloration, an inflammation on the flanks of the animal, even after you separate the lungs from it, talina basadaifen. You say that what caused the adhesion is an unhealthiness in the flank of the animal, not of the lungs, because you can see that there's something there. But if you don't see anything there, then it's from it comes from the lungs and it's a treifa. Ba'afal gav, delay mafkazika. Even though it's not, even though you don't see any wind coming out of it, which is right, that this is always the basis of what our fears, our lungs are, is that there's a hole, there's a nekev which passes it, and even though you don't see anything here, you say that, like we said, a krum that comes because of a makkah does not save it. Once it gets a hole, that any scar tissue that blocks it up is temporary and it remains a treif. He disagreed. He held that you could do the test and see if air came out. If air didn't come out, he held it would be mutter. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. Rashi says the other way around. He says even if you cut it and you found that the problem, the disease, was on the wall of the animal, he wasn't confident that that was the whole cause, that there wasn't also a nekev that was covered up by the attachment, and therefore he would test it to see if air came out. Amalei Mazutra Breder of Huna, Breder of Popular Avina. Hader of Nehemiah, Breder of Yosef, Etana Hamas Nisala. You're saying that it's going on this, it's saying that he was machmer on this case, that where you found a inflammation on the wall of on the diaphragm of the animal, on the flank of the animal, you still have to blow it up to check the lungs. We don't know. We have it that he said it about a different thing. This we had a couple of blot ago. If you have two of the nodes of the lungs that are attached to one another, like we said, not adjoining ones, which is normal, but for like non-consecutive nodes, less lebedikusa lachshure. There's no bedika to check to kasha them. Even if you check and there's no hole, we're still chayshish that there was a hole that got covered up. He was makel, and he said you can test it out. So he says that this member of Reb Nechemia Breder of Yosef, that you do a bedika, is not like we said to be machmer. It's not to be machmer. Rather, he's makel that you can check non-adjoining oini that are attached. Maskal Rashi, hi mai. Rav Ashi asks, is this possible? Over here, we could say that when we find a adhesion, we say that the adhesion is caused by an inflammation or a problem with the wall of the animal, and who cares if there's a problem there? That doesn't pass, so that's not one of the treifas. Aval hasam, ihai nakav treifa, vihai nakav treifa. Even if you blow it up and where you had the two einis, the two nodes that were attached, and you blow them up and you find that there's no nekev. But the problem is there was originally a nekev in one of them, and that's what caused the adhesion, the sircha. And now, what does it help to test that there's no air coming out? We still have to be concerned that there was originally a nekev, and we know a nekev that was covered up with the scar tissue is not kosher. It's a treifa by a lung. Mi Amar Rav Nachman Hachi. Right? We had said that Rav Nachman was that we have to check if it's attached to the lung of the if the lung is attached to the wall of the inside of the animal, you have to test it. And if you test it and you find a problem, you find a hole, then it's possible. The doifin soit masa kshera. If you have a hole in the lung and it's blocked by the doifin, it's kosher. So why are we saying that you test it for a nekev, it was blocked by the lungs, it was blocked by the wall. So what do you care that there was a nekev? We said that a nekev that's blocked because it's next to the wall, it's kosher. So that which we say that the flank of the animal can block a hole in the lung and it's not a treifa, that's a part of the flank that normally is next to the lung. So it's going to stay there and it will block it forever. But over here, it's talking about a place where they don't normally attach, but they attach because of the inflammation. So that's a nekev that will eventually disattach. Revisa, where is it that the lung normally touches the flanks? The part where the aini, those nodes, differentiate. If you have a lung that got a hole in it, and then that hole was blocked by the doifin, it's kosher. Ravina says it's not enough that it's just next to it, that it's next to the bone, and it's just blocked because they're next to each other. It has to be fully integrated. It has to have grown together. Like a what do you call it? Like you see a tree that grows around the gate. It has to have gotten fully enmeshed. If they didn't get fully attached, treifa amar min kuvihi. So you see that there was a nekev. It's considered nekev. Even if it later got attached, it should still be possible. And we're going to prove that something that was originally considered to be a nekev, if it later becomes a non-treifa, if it had the status that it could be a treifa, and then it got something blocking it that it shouldn't be a treifa, is a treifa. It can't lose its status as a treifa. Tanya. Nikiv puzzle, if a man's we're talking about a krush shivcha. So if the zakras of a man has a hole in it, it's puzzle, he becomes a krush shivcha who's not allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael because his zera doesn't come out with force. He's not able to. He's not fertile. He's sterile. Nistam, but if it gets blocked, if the hole that makes it that his zera doesn't come out with force gets blocked up, kosher neshu ma'ilid, because then he becomes fertile again. He's not sterile anymore, and therefore he can be. He's not a kruf shevcha. This is a psul that can be returned to its hechsher. What is it saying? That this is something that goes back to hechsher. What does it come to exclude? Is it not coming to exclude our case where the lung had after it was a treifa because it had a hole in it, it got attached to the doifin of the animal and it got enmeshed with it and blocked up the hole. They were saying that that's still going to be a treifa. No, not necessarily. It's not necessarily what we're excluding. Lamuti, krum she'ala machmas maka bereya. It's talking about our stamba, our general rule that if you have a hole in the lung and then a scar tissue developed on it, that will not reverse the tarfus that came because of the neck. The enochrome, like we said, that it's not considered to be a permanent treatment. Maskel Ravuka Bachama. Ilu inka bedoifen lahada mai. Um, what happens if it got enmeshed in the wall, but then a hole came into the diaphragm? So you have the hole of the lung that was stopped up by the diaphragm, but then the hole came into the diaphragm. It's like more treifa. So you're going to say it's a treifa. Listening to kuvas hadaifen. If this is going to be a treifa, um, so he's saying it's treifa, but if that's the case, why isn't it included in the Mishnah as the 19th case of a treifa? A gallbladder that got a hole in it, the covered site masa, but the hole was covered with the liver, kshera. We said it's kosher. Covered ladam my treifa. Listening to kuva covered. If we're saying that you have to count cases where there's something blocking that got its own hole in it, that should be a separate case. Let's say the case of the gallbladder was blocked, the hole in the gallbladder was blocked by the liver, which we said is kosher. And if you get a hole in the liver, opposite the hole in the gallbladder, that will make it possible. We don't count that when a hole in the kaved makes a hole, causes the hole in the gallbladder to passel it. That's not a psul in the kaved. We don't say a hole in the flanks that causes the hole. It's just a subset of the hole in the lungs. What happens if it got holes? If it got blisters, like it means liquid-filled blisters? Amalei kshera. Amalei afani oimekein. I agree. Talmidim mizdaznizin bedavar. They're concerned about the Amar of Nasna. Malya mugla treifa. If the blister is full of pus, it's treifa mayim zakim kshera. But if it's full of clear liquid, it's kosher, because that means if it's pus, then it's a infection, and that's not going to go away. But if it's clear, that can be reabsorbed. That's talking about a kidney, and kidneys are different. Kulyas are get disease; they don't recover, but a lung can recover. Itmar Rav Yisrael bar Yosef Havaka Azul Basreder Rav Yirmiyah b'Shuka the Tavchi. He was going after Rav Yirmiyah in the marketplace of the butchers. Chazal lahanach the kaimet tzimchi, and he saw lungs that had on it these blisters. Amle boy mar umtza. He said, "Don't you need some meat? Let's buy some of this meat." Like we paskin, these smachim don't passel it. Amle Leslie Priti. He said, "I don't have any money." Amle akfanana. He said, I'll lend you the money. Amalei, ma evidlach. He said, listen, I was just trying to avoid the situation, but the truth is I don't want these lungs with blisters. When they would come to Rabbi Yochanan, who was my Rebbe, he would send people to Rabbi Yehuda Rav Shimon, that he would say B'Shem Rav Shimon that was mutter. The Leiloi Sfirle, but Rabbi Yochanan did not really agree. But he didn't want to pass him for the oil because that was his shita. But the Messiah was that it was kosher. So he's saying, I also, like my Rabbi Yochanan, don't really want to eat it. Amarava, ki have a masginam basreder of Nachman b'shuka. When we're walking after Nachman b'shuka, the Galdoi of the Ratzanan, of the people who work in leather, v'amila b'shuka de Rabbanan, or in the shuk of the Chachamim, Chazi Hanach the Kanadi, that they had all these very large blisters. And he didn't say anything to them. He allowed them to continue selling them, like we paskin, that these tzmachim don't pass. Ami Ravazi have a chalfi b'shuka de Tveria. They were going in the shuk in Tveria. Chazi Hanach the Kaimi Tinri. He found these very hard tzmachim. Again, they didn't say anything about it. Shkoyach.
Yeah, that was the
Have a
last.
good Shabbos.